All right, there we go. Hello everyone, how's it going? Team here, and this is BxJS Weekly, bringing you all the best news. I just had to screw it up right from the beginning, right? This is BxJS Weekly, JavaScript news podcast, bringing you all the best JavaScript news of the week in a podcast form, and this is episode 105. We do have a pretty good amount of news today and a ton of releases. I guess coronavirus is making everyone stay at home and productive, so let's just, let's just dive into that. As usual, the first section of the day is getting started. We got 4 articles here today, with the first one being Introduction to D3.js. Now, I would add that this is actually an interactive introduction to D3.js. I think I already talked about Observable HQ at some point, but it's a really neat playground that basically allows you to construct articles / visualizations with inline JavaScript. And this article takes advantage of that by basically showing you how you can work with D3.js with inline examples, which you can edit as you want, right? So there's like, for example, there was a chart somewhere here. There we go. There's a bar chart, right? And there's the data for it. So you can actually just go ahead and adjust this in any way you want and just see what's going to happen. So like there's the width, you can tweak that and see the chart change in real time, which is super neat in my opinion. So if you're interested in data visualization and wanted to learn D3.js, but were confused about all the things that it basically does, because it is a very intimidating library, let's be honest, then this is a really, really good spot to start. And well, the interactivity of it just makes it all better. So if that sounds interesting, do check it out. Next article we got here is React hooks with Firebase Firestore. A really nice introduction to using Firestore with React hooks and how you can attach it to your own React components. It's very basic level, so there's nothing like super complex here. It's if you are familiar with hooks and Firestore, it's not going to be, you're not going to get any new information here. But if you are just getting started and you are confused as to how you would use Firestore or any other database really with hooks, this is a really good write-up, so do check this one out. Next article we got here is how to create a custom toast component with React.js. Now, again, this is an entry-level article that basically teaches you how to make the toast components that show you various notifications. In this case, there's 4 of them: success, danger, info, and warning. Again, very basic level. So if you are just getting started with React, this is probably a pretty good starting thing. If you are already coding in React for some time and understand how the portals and stuff like this work, you won't really find anything new here. It is a pretty good article, very detailed and everything. So if you are just getting started with React, make sure to check this one out. It's probably going to be helpful. And still, last article we got here for today in the getting started section is building a GitHub app with Node.js. So that's a tutorial that teaches you how to build a GitHub app. If you didn't know, the GitHub has this app integrations that you can you can build your own, right, to extend the GitHub functionality and do something whenever the user interacts with GitHub in any way, pretty much. So it's like, the pushes, pulls, issues creating, whatever. There's like a ton of various features. And obviously you can create your own custom apps. And this is the article guides you through doing that using Node.js. So if you ever wanted to extend GitHub functionality and was thinking, okay, so how do I do that with Node.js? Then this article got you covered and basically explains how to do everything from creating a new app on GitHub to setting up the Express API to figuring out the authentication and so on and so forth. So if you are interested in that, do check this one out. It's pretty good. All right, that covers the getting started section. Now we got articles and news. We got 3 articles here. The first one being Webpack 5 module federation, a game changer in JavaScript architecture. So this is a write-up about one of the features of the upcoming Webpack 5 release, which is the module federation, as the title says. And the idea is that you are gonna be able to... So right now, if you use Webpack, you know that it allows you to do like, to extract common code, do those chunks that can be shared across the pages and everything. But what if you have a larger setup where you use the Webpack or maybe even the same Webpack config for a bunch of different applications that are monorepo maybe or something like this, right? Well, this is the new feature that allows you to federate the common chunks from a set of applications, not just one app, which means you can share the code across, I mean, I guess, you would have to have some sort of a very complex product. Then again, if you do, this brings some very cool things to the table. Like, you can essentially have your own mini content delivery network that has, I don't know, 90% of your code, and then you have your apps that serve only very specific things, and Webpack splits that automatically, which honestly sounds pretty mind-blowing. So, okay, there's some scripts are blocked. Let me just fix that real quick. But yeah, if if you're working on a very big apps, on apps that have multiple parts and have to share the libraries, I would highly recommend reading through that, because it seems like it's going to be quite a game changer. There is this is a really cool idea, and again, not everyone's going to need that. Most of people, I imagine, are working on just one app that is big or monolithic or whatever, and there's probably not that many companies that have this kind of setup. But if you do, this is probably going to be quite a game changer for you. So do check this article out. It outlines basically how the model federation works, what it's going to do, how do you set it up, and so on and so forth. So it's really, really cool. Okay, next article we got here is how I made a 3D game in only 2 kilobytes of JavaScript. So that's one of those. I don't know about you, but I personally love reading articles about the entries, for the JS 1K jam, JS 10K jams, and so on and so forth. And this one talks about making a 3D game in just 2 kilobytes of JavaScript for 2K plus jam. And the game looks like this, basically, right? So it's very straightforward. It's I guess a runner, you would say, and it's actually, so it looks 3D, but it's actually built using plain canvas, so it doesn't really have any WebGL or whatever. It's just canvas and a lot of mathematics, which is on its own pretty mind-blowing, to be honest. Uses mouse control and then a lot of math with vectors to render this pseudo 3D and generate the map and so on and so forth. It's really cool to read. Like, there are some tricks that basically make it smaller, make it nicer, make it linear pre-rendering and drawing the skies and everything. It's just crazy. Every time when I read something like this, it just blows my mind. So if you're curious about how exactly was this built, how exactly does it make it look like 3D, what kind of tricks are used to decrease the size, and so on and so forth, do check this one out. It's actually pretty nice. And then there's obviously the minification and the segmentation that's showing exactly what happens in these bits of code. Like, the minification is just insane, to be honest. But yeah, that's a thing, and it actually works and is under 2 kilobytes, which is even crazier. Okay, the last article we got here for today is why Svelte is our choice for a large web project in 2020. It's a very detailed write-up on why the company in question, so the author here, I honestly don't remember the company name. I think I picked it up somewhere in Hacker News, and they did mention it there, but that's not important right now. So it's basically the reasoning on why they picked Svelte over React, Vue, and, well, any other JavaScript framework, right? I think this is a really good article for people who are not familiar with Svelte, or maybe heard about it, but are unsure why would you pick it over React, why would you pick it over Vue, over Angular, over anything else, what kind of advantages it has, what kind of disadvantages it has. It's a really well-written article that outlines just about any points out there that you might want to know about Svelte, about its ecosystem, about the tooling, about the performance issues, and so on and so forth. So if you're interested on weighing in basically whether you should use Svelte or not right now for your project, then I would highly recommend looking through that. It's actually a really, really good piece of text. So there we go. All right, that is it for the articles and news. Now we're coming to the tips, tricks, and bit-sized awesomeness. We got 4 things here today. So the first one being DuckDuckGo Tracker Radar exposes hidden tracking. Terrifying title, but in reality, it's a really neat piece of software. So DuckDuckGo, if you never heard about them, is a search engine, right? That is privacy by default, as they say. Basically, they don't track you. They don't write any logging or whatever. It's totally anonymous, and all of their search results are based purely on the queries you send, right? And in addition, they have a bunch of tools they release, such as DuckDuckGo Privacy Browser, DuckDuckGo privacy extensions for the existing browsers, mobile version and whatever. And they sort of also build around the whole like privacy thing, blocking the trackers, figuring out the hidden trackers, and so on and so forth. While doing that, they actually track a lot of websites that users visit, and they do the crawling and everything. And by doing that, they actually started collecting data for each specific website that outlines what kind of trackers do this website includes. And what they did is they just said, okay, you know what? We have all this amazing data. Let's make it public. Let's just open source it and allow people who build extensions or ad blocking lists or whatever to use this data to make privacy better, right? To improve the privacy, to decrease the use of trackers and so on and so forth. So the article goes into a bit more details on how exactly they do all of that. They also show what exactly is going on. And then they basically show some statistics for the trackers. I mean, obviously, as you imagine, the Google and Facebook are like leading the top 10 basically. But the cool thing is that the whole thing is publicly available. The data that they scraped is publicly available on GitHub. And if you are interested, you can basically go through it. There is also a data generator that you can use to see how exactly it was basically made. And yeah, you can just use that to create your own tracker blocking thing. Again, I'm guessing we're going to see those added to the like adblock, uBlock origin, whatever soon-ish, because it seems like a very nice data source for this kind of stuff. But anyway, if that sounds interesting, do check out the article and the repo. It's all published under permissive licenses, so it's Creative Commons Attribution, non-commercial, share-alike, which means that, as long as it's not commercial, you can basically do anything. And you attribute it, but yeah, there you go. It's actually pretty neat. And the source code is also there under Apache 2 license, which is also kind of neat. So you can basically reproduce the whole data set if you like to. Again, that will probably take ages, but there we go. All right, next thing we got here is the neat tip on using inputs and what to use instead of number inputs in cases that when you just want to enter, like, for example, the numeric input mode, something that I did not know existed, but something that actually sounds extremely helpful. There is a picture here. Let me just do that real quick. As a picture that's showing the numeric keyboard. I'm always annoyed when I browse from the mobile and then they ask me for a 2FA token, and it opens the normal keyboard, which, it's not exactly the handiest way to enter the one, like the numeric code, right? So the input type numerical is actually pretty neat. So if you are doing this kind of stuff, do check it out. There's a bunch of links that reference to the deep dives on the input mode, for example, and the 2FA stuff. If you are interested, do check this one out. Okay, next thing we got here is the tiny tool. I just, it's not really, I wasn't really sure of putting it in libraries and demos or here, so I just throw it in here. It's called Worth It Modern JS Edition. So the way it works is that you throw in your URL, right? And it will evaluate whether it's worth it for you to split module and no module, and basically tell you, what kind of benefit will you get if you migrate to modern build chain that separates the modern browsers from legacy, and how much you're going to win. If you're building a modern website and you're targeting evergreen websites, it's probably not going to help much. But if you have a legacy product that loads a lot of stuff that probably is not needed in a modern browsers, then do try that. I've seen some websites win up to 50% of the bundle size by using just that, by throwing out the polyfills for legacy browsers, which is pretty damn cool. So if you are maintaining an older website, make sure to check this one out. It's actually really, really cool. And still, last thing we got here is new accessibility feature that have been added to the Chrome DevTools that now allows you to simulate vision deficiencies. So you can simulate blurred vision, you can simulate various types of color blindness, and honestly, it looks pretty damn impressive. So if you are working with the websites that should be highly accessible, make sure to check this one out. It seems like it's incredibly helpful, and yeah, it's just like, the fact that you can do that using the DevTools is just amazing to me. So there you go. Okay, that is it for the tips, tricks, and bit-sized awesomeness. Now we're coming to the releases. What is it? Yeah, I'm not going to click that right now. So we got quite a bunch of them, starting with Rollup version 2.0. So we got quite a few breaking changes. The first one being that Node 10 is now required, but you know, Node 10 is LTS for quite some time, so I think that's perfectly reasonable. There is now a new file structure for ESM builds, and you know, there's just a bit changed the naming and stuff like this, which I think is the new ones are a bit nicer. And then they now include chokidar, and they also include there was another thing, the acorn again, right? So I'm basically removing its only external dependencies. And yeah, it looks like a really great release. I still use Rollup for my library and, you know, smaller projects, I guess. It's a great bundler when you don't need something as complex as a Webpack. Not saying that you cannot do complex stuff with Rollup, you absolutely can, but just Webpack, I guess, is more flexible in this regard. But Rollup works amazing when you need something to quickly set up the build chain for the library, for example. I don't think I've ever used it to set up the application build chain, but I know that, for example, Svelte uses it as the primary bundler, right? So it definitely works for apps as well. But anyway, do check it out if you never heard of it. If you already know about it, make sure to update. The breaking changes most of them are quite mild and easy to migrate. So do have a look through that. Okay, next release we got here is Immer version 6.0, which adds the large data sets to a draft. Basically, adding large data sets to a draft has been optimized. It used to have this problem where if you have a really large data set and you try to draft something, it would basically freeze the front end. I think I encountered this once or twice, but splitting the states would basically fix that. But now it seems like it's been quite optimized, and it's mostly no longer a problem. And I mean, by large data set, I mean like really large data sets, so like thousands upon thousands of entries. And yeah, it now has compatibility, typing support with TypeScript for versions pre 3.7, which I know that was a pain in the ass for some people working with it. I personally not using TypeScript that much, so that never was much of a problem for me. But you know, if you use TypeScript, that's probably good for you. Right, next release we got here is Next.js version 9.3, with the major highlight being the next generation static site generation. Next generation, yeah, you know what. Okay, and it basically allows you to build optimized static websites through new data fetching methods. So it's kind of turns Next.js into basically Gatsby. I mean, obviously you won't have like GraphQL backend and everything, but you can do a setup that is as complex as Gatsby with Next.js tooling right now. They also have added a preview mode that allows you to bypass the statically generated pages to display the drafts from CMS directly, which sounds quite helpful. So again, very similar to what Gatsby does with the development mode. There's also built-in Sass support for global style sheets now, built-in Sass CSS module support for component level styles. So they basically added Sass. And there's the static optimization for 404s and 32 kilobytes smaller runtime, which is bonkers. I think it was like 60 kilobytes or something before that, and now it's half that size basically, which is pretty mind-blowing, to be honest. And now they have the GitHub discussions enabled, so you can actually go ahead and use the new GitHub discussions on Next.js repo to talk about, well, anything Next.js related, which is kind of neat. I honestly cannot wait when GitHub will make those publicly available. So there we go. Right, next release we got here is VS Code version 1.43 with quite a lot of quality of life improvements. So the search editors is probably my favorite one. It basically allows you to, so if you don't know, when you searched in VS Code, it would show the results in this sidebar, which was mildly annoying. But now you can actually use the search editor feature that would basically show the same search results in an editor space, so you can actually properly, you know, overview that without looking at the tiny left sidebar. So that's a great improvement. And there is, as usual, a ton of other things, including Linux screen reader support, if that's a thing that you wanted, white space on selection display. I personally think have enabled the white space display always, because it just makes it easier to figure out what's going on. And then there's, yeah, settings sync preview. Yeah, this is one of the things that we've been, a bunch of people have been talking about in the Discord. So settings syncs has been an extension for VS Code for years now, I think, right? And they're finally adding this as a core feature of the VS Code itself. So you're no longer going to be needing to install a separate extension to sync your settings across different machines. It's now going to be part of VS Code, and it's already in the insiders release and going to be shipped probably in the next major release in March, essentially, which is really cool. So I'm quite excited about that. I could not live without settings syncs probably. So there we go. All right, next release we got here is Firefox version 74 that adds a bunch of improvements for example, importing your bookmarks and history from the new Microsoft Edge. It now allows you to remove the external applications using add-on managers that were installed by external tools, which I think is probably the most frustrating thing ever when you install some third-party app and it adds bunkered, like, you know, annoying extensions to all your browsers, and you're just like, what? Where's this coming from? There's the improvements to the Facebook container. So the containers features is probably one of those that I wish the Chrome had as well. If you've never heard about that, the idea is that you can create a new tab that will live in its own isolated container, right? So this, if I open this temporary container, it doesn't have any of my cookies, it doesn't have any of my credentials, it doesn't have any of my tracking data, it has a completely new ID, and it's totally isolated. And as soon as I close this, it will kill the container. So this is the temporary container, but you can create your own containers that are essentially, you know, like for work, for banking, for different Twitter accounts, for Facebook. And they have this Facebook container that automatically isolates Facebook in a separate container so Facebook cannot track you. Now, sometimes this might be a bit annoying, right? Because if the container is isolated and you want to log in somewhere with Facebook, you no longer can, right? Because you have to log in with Facebook in your primary container. Well, now they allow you to whitelist websites where you can use the Facebook login, for example, which actually sounds quite damn handy. Again, I'm not using the Facebook container specifically. I'm using the containers extension that allows you to define custom containers for, well, any website and just isolate Facebook using that, which works perfectly fine. But there you go. And yeah, I think that's basically the major highlights. There's a bunch of other things. If you're interested, do check out the release notes. And the last release of the week we got here is Node.js version 13.11, bringing us the async hook with enter with to ALS, and then an API release 6, as well as a bunch of other minor improvements. I don't think there's anything that is like significant basically, but yeah, I think there was like a bunch of regression fixes and other minor improvements that are not notable worthy, I guess. But anyway, if you're living on AH, make sure to update because that's always a good idea. All right, that is it for the releases. Now we're coming to the libs and demos. We do have quite a bit of them, and just open all of that. The first one being the speed-measure-webpack-plugin. So if you are, you know, care about how long does it take for your Webpack to build, then this plugin is for you. It basically allows you to see how fast your plugins and loaders are so you can optimize your build times. And yeah, it essentially splits your build and shows you how long each plugin took to does it work, so you can actually figure out which ones are slower, where you have your bottlenecks, and then change your either your plugins or your Webpack builds, maybe split it, maybe separate it, maybe make it parallel, to make sure that your build doesn't take too long, which sounds quite handy in some cases. So if your build takes longer than a couple of minutes, this probably is a good idea to use that plugin to figure out why. Next thing we got here is Stork. It's a fast web search made for static websites. It actually looks really cool, and as you can see here, it's built using Rust. So it's a WebAssembly tool actually. And yeah, it's a search engine that allows you to create a list, register it within the specific Stork instance, and then just search over it, all of that in the WebAssembly, which looks really neat. Like the Stork search itself, as an example here, with a bunch of tools. So you can search for anything. It actually works very fast. which is very impressive, to be honest, considering the data set here is relatively large. So if you are looking for something like this, do check this one out. I'm thinking maybe I should add this to BxJS website, because the version we're using now is really getting relatively slow because we now have a ton of links. But anyway, there we go. Okay, next thing we got here is scriptlint, an enforceable script naming standard for package.json. So it's a package.json linter that allows you to enforce the naming for your npm scripts. If you ever, create enough scripts to have the need to enforce their naming, do check this one out. It might be quite helpful. Right, next thing we got here is React Loaders Kit. So you probably heard about Loaders Kit, and there's like a ton of them around. This one is a wrapper for React. The cool thing is that it uses emotion library. So that means that every loader is a standalone component. It can be imported without any third-party CSS or any other files that needs to be included, which means it's going to be quite tiny. So if you are looking for a fancy set of loaders, do check this one out. There's a demo page with all of them. There's quite a lot, and some of them look really damn nice. I probably should start using that. You know what? I need to remember that and add it to our current project, because the current loader I have is a bit garbage. There we go. Okay, next thing we got here is cosha, colorful shadows for your images. And just exactly as it says, it basically adds fancy shadows that follow the image sides. So there's some obviously JavaScript magic going on in the background, but it actually looks really fancy. So if you ever needed to create fancy, colorful looking shadows for images on your website, again, don't overdo it because it's probably quite CPU intensive. Do check this one out. It actually looks pretty damn nice. Okay, next thing we got here is hexoid, yet another library from Luke Edwards, and yet another library for generating random IDs. Now this one is extremely fast. It's actually faster than the one that we had last time. And it allows you to generate the arbitrary length IDs. Yeah, it's basically all it does, right? So it's about, what is it? It's 20, 30? Yeah, almost 30 times faster than the UID, which is just insane. So if you really want to generate UIDs very fast, then do check this one out. Okay, next thing we got here is React Table. So this library has been around for a while, but I don't think I've covered it. And they just released the version 7.0 that comes with a nice hooks API. So if you are working with tables in React and you wanted something very complex, then do check this one out. This one is actually really, really cool looking and allows you to do some very crazy stuff with tables. And the new API is just very nice to use. So there you go. Okay. Next library we got here is Deno WebView. This probably is my favorite one of the week because it really shows off how flexible the idea of, or I guess the architecture of Deno is, right? So this library, and it's a standalone library that you can just import using the simple import clause in Deno, right? So there's nothing, you don't need to recompile Deno to use it. It's a separate third-party library. So this one creates a bindings for WebView and allows you to create web-based desktop UIs, right? So essentially what this does is it adds the web UI to Deno as a simple module that you can import. It's kind of like almost an Electron for Deno, but without the need to actually pull in the full browser. And yes, it's work in progress. Like there's a lot of features missing. You still don't have two-way Deno bindings, for example, so you cannot call Deno from JavaScript, but that's something that you can add in the future. But my favorite thing about this is it really showcases how flexible the Deno architecture is, because literally all you have to do to import a native module that calls local native WebView is just one import command, which is just freaking amazing. I cannot wait for Deno to mature to allow more stuff like this. This is really cool. So, if you're interested in Deno, if you're curious about the project development, I would definitely keep an eye on this lib, because this has a lot of potential, to be honest. Probably, if this matures, you probably could throw away the Electron and use this and have the better performance and memory footprint just purely because of the way it's built, right? It will be very interesting to see how all of that develops and whether it can actually replace Electron in the long run. I mean, long run meaning, 3, 4, 5 years once the Deno matures. Okay, anyway. Continuing, we got pairify, the library that finds balanced matches. So essentially, it's a utility library that allows you to quickly find the matching curly braces or round braces or angle braces or template literals or whatever in your source code or text. Honestly, not sure what the use case would be. I guess probably good for parsing something or creating parsers. But then again, there's the parser grammar stuff. But maybe you know the application for that, so do check it out. Maybe that is helpful for you. Right, next thing we got here is textics, JavaScript text statistics. The thing is that basically you just throw in some text in it and it counts the lines, words, characters, and spaces for you. Nothing super complex here, but might be helpful if you are working with text a lot. Okay. Next thing we got here is redwoodjs, bringing full stack to Jamstack. So this is essentially an all-in-one, how do you call that? What? Wait a second. What? I definitely, oh, there we go. Now it works. Okay, so some of that stuff is a bit broken, still in alpha, so there's a caveat here. It's a full stack serverless web application framework that allows you to build and deploy Jamstack apps with ease. So yeah, it sort of aims to abstract all that's, the heavy Amazon Web Service lambdas and all that kind of stuff, so you can focus on basically building the business logic. Bundles together React, GraphQL via Apollo, Prisma, Jest, Storybook, Babel, and Webpack, and just lets you write the code for your app. It looks promising, but again, it's still early alpha version. And there's like some broken links even on the website, so keep that in mind. But if that sounds interesting, if you are interested in serverless and Jamstack specifically, I guess, do check this one out. Maybe this is something that you will like. Okay, next thing we got here is react-state-selector, performant type-safe, and easier React global state manager. Yes, one more of those. It looks interesting. So like, yeah, it's, it doesn't look too different from most of other solutions, and I'm not sure after trying xstate I would go back to something like this. But probably if the project is small enough, this would be okay. I don't know. Anyway, I think the title says everything, so if that sounds interesting, do check it out. Right, next thing we got here is codecept.js. New, I guess new because I haven't seen it, but it's a supercharged end-to-end testing framework that supports Puppeteer, Selenium, and now Playwright. So you can actually use it with Firefox, Chrome, and well, Selenium allows you to use it with just about anything. What I found cool is the way that they did the user-facing APIs. Basically, instead of typing that, whatever, Cypress click, Cypress get, whatever, you literally type, I am on the page, I click, I feel field, I click, I see. Which I think is a really interesting way of doing that. And it's really easy to read those tests because they read almost as if, a description. The cool thing about that is that the reports it generate are also based on the commands you write, which also read kind of like the description of what basically happened, which is pretty neat. So if you do a lot of end-to-end testing and that sounds interesting, do check it out. It seems like a really nice library. Right, next thing we got here is another library from Luke Edwards, a tiny and fast utility for sorting ISO 8601 date strings. So if you're working a lot with date strings and you need to sort them in a fast manner, then do check this one out. Again, it's just freaking, like the performance is just insane. I don't know how he does this, but it's just every time. So there we go. Okay, next thing we got here is mutik, a tiny immutable state management library based on Immer. So it's essentially an Immer-based store, I guess, global state management for React is what I would say, right? So it's your typical using provider to pass the store and then using context to grab that store and work with it from React. Nothing super fancy here. Probably would work really good for minor, like small-ish projects. But then again, if you have something large, check out xstate. It's really good. Right, and the last library we have here for today is fdir, the fastest directory crawler for Node.js. Zero dependencies, grabs 10K files in about 13 milliseconds. So yes, if you need to crawl directories and if you needed to do it really fast with a really large and complex folders, then do check this one out. It actually seems to be very damn fast. Like, there's nothing comes even close to that stuff. Like, okay, maybe this rrdir synchronous, but yeah, it's still not quite as fast. So there you go. Okay, that is it for libs and demos. The last thing I got here for today is this announcement about JavaScript, the first 20 years. So this is a book written by Alan Versbrock and Brendan Ike. And there is now a preprint available that you can just read for free, essentially. And there's 180 pages of JavaScript history, which is a bit of a bonkers. So yeah, if that sounds interesting, if you want to know the history of JavaScript from, you know, basically the guy who created it, do check this one out. It's really interesting. I have not read through it yet, but I'm planning to do that. But yeah, you know, the first few pages that I read were pretty damn fascinating. So there you go. Right, that is it from my side. So this was BxJS episode 105. If you guys have any questions or suggestions or libraries you want to share, feel free to throw them into the chat right now. If not, we can just wrap it up here and go have a nice rest of the weekend or rest of the week. As usual, you can find all the mentioned links on GitHub or on bxjs.dev. We have a Discord server. We can join and chat about JavaScript and video games if you want to. There is my Twitter where I post some of the JavaScript stuff and just do the typical shit posting. There is a Telegram channel where I gather all the links I find over the duration of the week. They are unfiltered and contain a lot of links that don't make it to the podcast if you are interested in that kind of stuff. And what else? Do we have anything else? I don't think we have anything else. I think there was... Oh yeah, if you are interested in just listening this, you can actually listen it on Castbox or on... No, sorry, that's actually wrong. On Anchor, there we go. Wasn't updated. And yeah, that's basically it from my side. Okay, let me try to read your username. Sacred Game. I guess it's just Sacred Gaming, right? Thank you for your kind words. It's really cool to hear. Hey Beerus, welcome to the stream. You are a bit late because we're wrapping up, but you know, other than that, nothing much. All right, I'll give you a couple more seconds to throw in anything else you want into the chat. Otherwise, we can just wrap it up here. As usual, I am now streaming on YouTube and Twitch. So if you prefer YouTube over Twitch, you can now watch it over there. Other than that, yeah, I guess nothing else from my side. So stay safe, guys. Don't get any coronavirus stuff. I hope you enjoy working from home, and I hope your country already switched to that because it makes perfect sense. Thank you guys very much for watching. Thank you for all your kind words. Hope you have an awesome rest of the weekend and awesome rest of the week. Come join Discord to chat, and I see you next.